Number 10. Immortal jellyfish. The immortal jellyfish is a species of small, biologically immortal jellyfish found worldwide in tropical waters. Given the nickname immortal jellyfish for its ability to revert back to a polyp stage while it's starving or in danger and basically escaping death, researchers believe this jellyfish may hold the cure to cancer. Under normal conditions, its life cycle is divided into 4 parts. The union of the male and female gametes produces a larva or planula. It then attaches to the seabed as a polyp, similar to an anemone. The polyps then release a fura, or a young jellyfish, into the phase prior to sexual maturity. They become jellyfish, reproduce sexually, and start over. But if they are stressed by an environmental threat, the jellyfish revert. After reproducing, they return to the previous phases, becoming polyps in the ocean floor again. As far as scientists know, jellyfish can repeat the process indefinitely. Thus, they are said to be biologically immortal. They can be eaten by a predator or fall into the hands of a swimmer, but they do not die of old age, which is pretty cool. Number 9. River at the bottom of the Black Sea. The Black Sea is one of the most isolated from the world's oceans, and there is a river flowing along the bottom of it. Now, it's just not a normal river. Oh no, it's complete with trees, leaves, and even waterfalls. One major difference is that the underwater river, when rounding a bend, moves in currents spinning the opposite direction from those on land. It has been an intriguing aspect of the ocean since it was found. According to scientists, if the river was on land, it would be the 6th largest river in the world in terms of the volume of water flowing through it. The discovery of the river, announced on August 1st, 2010, was made by scientists at the University of Leeds, and it is the first of its kind in the world. Number 8. The Mariana Trench. In the western Pacific Ocean, you will find the deepest part of the sea. The Mariana Trench is deeper than the height of Mount Everest, 43 miles wide, and a massive 1,580 miles long, which is 5 times longer than the Grand Canyon. A certified U.S. national monument, only small areas of the Mariana Trench have been explored. James Cameron reached the bottom in a submersible vessel Deep Sea Challenger in 2012, with the last successful attempt to search the ocean floor coming in 2020, when the Chinese submersible Fenduji made it all the way down. Several new species of underwater creatures have been discovered in the Mariana Trench, with most living on the surface of the ocean floor, including a type of sea cucumber. Explorers will find themselves in total darkness as they continue to understand what else lies in the deepest parts of the ocean and how marine life manages to survive. Number 7. Los Mahabalipuram Pagodas. The Lost Pagodas was long considered a myth by many because of the lack of scientific evidence of its existence. But in 2004, when the infamous Indian Ocean tsunami hit, for a brief moment when the waters parted, large rock-like structures emerged from the water and were witnessed by many onlookers. The Lost Mahabalipuram Pagodas in India, making it an incredible discovery. The remains of an ancient city were found in 2001 off the coast of India. Scientists retrieved many different items from the large city, including artwork, hand tools, fossilized bones, and pottery shards. What makes the discovery incredible is that the city is thought to be around 9,000 years old, which predates to the earliest Indian civilizations that sprung up 4,000 years ago. There is still not a lot known about this ancient city, as scientists and archaeologists continue to search the area for more clues and debate how old the city really is and who once inhabited it. But wow. Number 6. The 2,400-year-old boat in the Black Sea. Archaeologists working with engineers from the Black Sea Maritime Archaeology Project, aka MAP, have discovered a 23-meter shipwreck that has laid undisturbed for more than 2,400 years. The find is believed to be the oldest intact shipwreck ever discovered. Thanks to the lack of oxygen in the Black Sea and the fact it was discovered a mile below the surface means it is exceptionally well preserved. The 75-foot vessel is thought to be ancient Greek. It still has its mast, rudders, and rowing benches. Speaking to The Guardian, Professor John Adams, the principal investigator with MAP, explained, "A ship surviving intact from the classical world, lying in over 2 kilometers of water, is something I would have never believed possible, and that it will change our understanding of shipbuilding and seafaring in the ancient world." The ship is thought to be a trading vessel. However, up to now, the design has only been seen on the size of ancient Greek pottery. discovery. The find is an archaeological first. The team have left the vessel untouched, apart from a small sample that was used to carbon date it by the University of Southampton. Number 5. $150 million of lost silver. At the bottom of the Atlantic for more than a century, a 150-year-old steamship had been found in 2003. The ship is the Republic, which sailed from New York in 1865, just after the Civil War, carrying 59 passengers and crew and mixed cargo meant to help New Orleans recover from the war. About 100 miles off Georgia, battling a hurricane, it sank in waters a third of a mile deep. Its cargo of lost coins, experts say, may now be up to worth $150 million. That would make it one of history's richest treasure wrecks. It's a dream come true, said Dr. Donald H. Kagan, an expert on 19th century coins who is advising the company that discovered the wreck. There are piles of coins. The company Odyssey Marine Exploration of Tampa, Florida, who announced the find, said it hoped to retrieve all the coins. The company has retrieved more than 1,600 gold and silver coins, and none are dated later than 1865, tending to confirm the wreck's identity, said George Stem, the company's director of operations. For some reason, even the silver coins are in great condition. Part of it is surely the physical environment down there, he said. The icy deep explorers are still finding can often preserve objects, even precious metals like silver, that normally corrode easily. It's like finding a real treasure, and I would definitely like to receive some of those special coins. Number 4. Giant squid. The Kraken is a legendary sea monster of enormous size that is said to appear off the coast of Norway. Now, this is a mythical creature, but there is some truth to it. A giant squid was found on shore in Denmark in 1853. The giant squid is as elusive as the legend it inspired. It lives so deep underwater that we have limited information about it. However, we know it has the largest eyes of all living creatures, grows up to 18 meters, and is frequently hunted by sperm whales for food. The weaker giant squid generally flees when confronted by a whale, however, it sometimes fights back when cornered, and it's not unusual to find sperm whales with scars left from their battles with giant squids. It wasn't until the turn of the century in 2001 that humans saw the giant squid for the first time, and only a few years after that when it was finally photographed, making it one of the most elusive on the planet. The giant squid has long been known to exist, but capturing it on film has taken scientists extensive time and voyages to the deepest parts of the ocean where life is difficult to sustain. Number 3. Elongated skulls. Saquayum is a cenote located in Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula. It is a place that locals feared, and in 2012 a team of divers discovered the reason behind its fearsome reputation. An underwater survey discovered 2 chambers of the cenote littered with human bones, including deformed skulls. Archaeologists spent 2 weeks exploring the 2 chambers. The skulls belong to different sexes and ages, so they aren't thought to be sacrifices, which begs the question, why are they buried deep underwater? Archaeologist Bradley Russell, who made the discovery, believes the dead may have been buried as some form of ritual, or that they could be the victims of a plague that swept through the area. You wouldn't want them near the rest of the population, and you wouldn't want to drink the water either, Russell explained. Regardless, that's creepy. And why are the skulls elongated? Are they another species of human? I have so many questions. Number 2. Baltic Sea Anomaly. In 2011, a sonar image was taken by Peter Lindberg, Dennis Erberg, and their Swedish Ocean X diving team while searching for treasures on the ocean floor in the Baltic Sea. What the picture showed was a seemingly non-natural 200-foot circular object with passageways and stairs. The discovery looked like something out of a Star Wars film, and many people believed it was a spaceship that sank to the bottom of the ocean. Samples taken from the area in 2012 were given to Swedish scientists who said that there was nothing extraterrestrial about the area, but I'm not too sure about that. What Ocean X and the crew had found was weird, and many still think there is a UFO lying at the bottom of the Baltic Sea, and there's another expedition to the area planned soon. And coming in at number 1 is giant underwater pyramids. Off the coast of Portugal in the Atlantic Ocean is an anomaly that experts have been unable to fully understand or explain. Picked up by oceanic GPS technology, measurements of a structure were found, leading researchers to believe that 2 giant pyramids of ancient times times sit underwater thousands of feet below the surface. The GPS data received back has the structures with a base of 8,000 square feet and about 150 feet tall, making these pyramids pretty giant in size. But there's very little explanation into their existence, leaving it entirely up to speculation. Why would they be there? Is it another hidden city? Who knows? The pyramid has been underwater for about 20,000 years. Considering this is around the time of the last ice age, where glaciation was melting from its peak 2,000 years prior, whatever civilization, human or not, that was around before the ice age could be responsible for building the pyramid. While the Portuguese Navy still hasn't determined the origins, many might question why this hasn't been first reported sooner than late 2012. To further support the idea that this pyramid could have been built by different civilizations, archaeologists from the Portuguese Association of Archaeological Research have recently discovered evidence on Pico Island that suggests their belief that humans existed in the Azores region before the arrival of the Portuguese thousands of years ago.
Starting up this list in our number 10 spot, we have the Venus landscape. Many people would call Venus an absolute hellscape, and for fair reasons. It's the second planet from the sun, but somehow it manages to be the hottest planet in our solar system, which in part is due to the almost entirely carbon dioxide atmosphere. There are clouds of sulfuric acid that hover above the volcanic landscape and lava flows, and the pressure is immense, sitting at around 92 times the pressure you would feel on Earth at sea level. Here's where the mysterious part comes in, however. It is thought that Venus was once a planet that was actually very similar to Earth. A planet with oceans of liquid water, one that could potentially support life. So, what happened? While it leaves us with scientific mysteries, it also leaves us with existential questions as well. The Earth and Venus are like siblings. They were made at the same time, they're made of the same stuff, yet Venus is awful and apocalyptic and Earth is a paradise for us. How could this have happened? Theories range from Venus being cooked by the sun to Venus being cooked by volcanoes and hot magma. I don't have the answers to Venus's mysteries, but I can definitely say that I am glad it happened over there and not here on Earth. In our number 9 spot today, we have the Potom crater. Located in Siberia, there is a giant crater that has origins we can't quite figure out. Potom is giant at 520 feet wide and 139 feet tall, and it's basically made up of broken limestone. Some people who are local to the area refer to it as the Fire Eagle's Nest and tend to associate the mound with death because of the lack of plant growth on it, and apparently also the lack of animals that are willing to go near it, which is always a good reason to stay away from something. If the animals don't like it, they probably have some sort of reason that our senses aren't picking up on. The crater was first discovered in 1949 by a Russian geologist, but despite all of the years it's been, we still aren't quite sure how it came to be. While we aren't sure, we have plenty of possible theories that include an ultra-dense meteorite that had sunk underground after impact, or others suggest it might be a fragment of the Tunguska meteorite. Some believe it's the breakthrough of a pocket of natural gas, but at this point, despite several scientific expeditions to the crater, the origins of it are still mysterious as ever. Maybe one day we'll know for sure, but it's entirely possible that we may never know. In our number 8 spot today, we have tardigrades. What in the world are these things? We know that they're little 8-legged microorganisms, we know that they're most often found in mossy trees, and we know that they basically have superpowers considering how they can live without water, they can withstand temperatures as extreme as negative 200 degrees Celsius all the way to 150 degrees Celsius. They can even survive in outer space. This is exactly why people are speculating where they are even from, as some people think that maybe outer space is where they came from. There are of course others who believe that they are from this Earth, but even with the most elaborate gene sequencing, scientists aren't able to exactly figure out what they are or even what phylum they belong to. They are pretty much an anomaly here on Earth, and while they are super interesting, they're also super mysterious. What do you guys think? Some sort of extraterrestrial organism, or perhaps just an earthly phenomena? Are they worms? Are they insects? Are they crustaceans? Or are they aliens? Who knows? In our number 7 spot today, we have the octopus exodus. Okay, octopuses are already mysterious. They've got a ton of legs, they're elusive, they're way too smart, but why did they walk out of the sea? I'm not bringing forward some new evolution theory, I'm talking about when, in 2017, dozens of octopuses just emerged from the sea and started to crawl along the coast of a seaside town in Wales. They just went out for a nightly stroll, and no one knows why or where they were off to. There are multiple theories that have been put forward that include things like octopus dementia, which is a whole other story, displacement because of storms, or perhaps a population boom that left octopuses searching far and wide for food. And while these are all relatively reasonable explanations, they fail to explain why this mass octo-exodus stopped abruptly just 3 days later. Yeah, it's really weird. I wish we could just pick the brain, well, one of the 9 they apparently have, again, a whole other story, of an octopus for a ton of reasons, but finding answers to this mystery just might top the list. In our number 6 spot today we have bilingual. Okay, this is a true story that has to do with a person named Ben McMahon. So while in high school, Ben started to learn Mandarin, but really only got to a level where he could have very basic conversations. We're certainly not talking about him being fluent. So anyway, after high school, in 2015, Ben was unfortunately in a really bad car accident where he was T-boned from the side, and this resulted in him being rushed to the hospital and placed into an induced coma for a week. When he woke up, he began to get frustrated when he realized that no one could understand what he was saying. That was until a nurse who had the ability to speak Mandarin overheard him and was able to understand exactly what he was saying. When Ben awoke from this coma, he was no longer speaking English, he was fluently speaking Mandarin only. To make this even more curious, Ben had no concept that he was speaking another language. He says there was no English to Mandarin translation happening in his head. It was simply just the most natural thing coming out of his mouth. After some time passed, Ben was able to regain his memory and ability to speak English, and he is now able to differentiate between the two, but exactly how this happened is a true mystery to experts. According to Ben, one of the leading theories is that, quote, "For English speakers, most of our language memory is on the left side of the brain, but for some reason, Mandarin speakers use both hemispheres of the brain more than, say, your average English speaker. And I received most of the impact on my left side, so that side needed to rest and repair itself. Potentially what then happened is the brain went, okay, the left side needs to go into more rest, let's shift the language activity over to the right side, and for that reason maybe Mandarin became more natural." Whatever really happened here remains a mystery, but it truly is fascinating and shows the unbelievable abilities our brains have that we aren't always even conscious of. In our number 5 spot today we have the North Pole. We've all heard plenty of stories about the North Pole on our planet. I mean, maybe we know it as the place where Santa and the elves live, or maybe we know it as just the northernmost point of the Earth, diametrically opposite to the South Pole, but either way, we talk about it. You know what we don't talk about enough though? The North Pole of Saturn. If you're thinking, well, what could be so special there, you came to the right place. At Saturn's North Pole, there is a weather system the size of 2 Earths, which is already startling, but here's the curious part. It's shaped as a hexagon. This is weird because the only other naturally occurring hexagonal shape scientists have found is in crystals. So, how exactly is this happening? Despite this weather system being observed and photographed by NASA's Cassini spacecraft for years, it still remains a total mystery to us. Couple this with how the storm somehow turned from a turquoise color to a yellow color in just a few years and we truly have a baffling weather mystery. In our number 4 spot today we have Tabby's star. Alright, it's about time we start asking the real questions, and by that I mean, what is going on with Tabby's star? KIC 8462852, or Tabby star, is located just 1,500 light years away from us, but the mystery of it lies in how it keeps experiencing a dimming in its brightness of around 22%. Normally stars only see a dimming of about 1%, so this is obviously an extreme jump that has us intrigued. What exactly is going on here? Honestly, there are people out there who believe that this dimming is proof of some sort of structure passing in front of it in a sort of orbit. Like, I don't know, maybe the sort of thing an advanced civilization could build? I'm all up for the idea of aliens, but I know that's not everyone's jam, so maybe we can just chalk it up to some sort of space situation that we have yet to discover. Considering how terrifying of a place space is, that isn't exactly comforting. At this point, we aren't sure what is causing the dimming, but it's becoming abundantly clear that the possibilities right now are endless. In our number 3 spot today, we have sleep. Why do we sleep? It's my favorite part of every day, and even if we didn't need it, I feel like I would still do it because it's the most peace I get in a day, but despite how much I love it, no one is exactly sure why we do it. Of course, people have been researching it for decades because we've done it since the beginning of our existence, but despite the many theories out there, we still aren't quite sure. We know a lot about what's going on while we sleep, we just don't know why we need it. There are many other animals that also sleep like us, but there are also tons of life forms that don't. These include jellyfish, bacteria, plants, sponges. So why do higher animals have to sleep in order to stay healthy, sane, and I don't know, alive? There must be some sort of evolutionary advantage, but we still have yet to explain exactly why, where it started, but honestly, I'm okay with this mystery. As long as we're doing it, I'm happy. In our number 2 spot today, we have gravity. Prior to the 1600s, if you were to bring up the idea of gravity to someone, they might think you were a witch. Or perhaps the devil. I mean, a woman who could do basic addition back then was surely a sign of something dark, so talking about some invisible force that holds us to the earth? Forbidden. That was until Isaac Newton came along and said, hey, why does the apple fall down from the tree? Why not like sideways? And thus, gravity was born. That's not exactly how it happened, but you get the idea. Gravity is very obviously important to us, and not only because it keeps us here on the planet. I mean, the moon's gravity causes the tides of our ocean. Gravity keeps us in orbit in our cozy little solar system home with our nice warm sun. We know these things, and we're pretty positive that it exists, but how much do we really understand it? We know that this force is generated somehow from matter, and that the more massive an object, the greater its ability to attract other objects. So we understand how it acts, but we don't know why it exists. Why are atoms mostly empty space, and why is the force that holds them together different from gravity? What even really is gravity? Is it a particle? With our current understanding of physics, we aren't really able to answer these questions. Maybe we just don't have the technology or the capacity yet, or maybe it's just meant to forever be a mystery to us. Either way, although it's a mystery, I'm glad it's around. In our number 1 spot today, we have matter versus antimatter. Okay, so based on what we currently understand and believe about particle physics, matter and antimatter are equal, but they're opposites. So they should basically just destroy each other and then leave nothing, and most of this should have happened in the very early beginning days of the universe, but I mean, it obviously didn't. Somehow there was enough matter left over to then make billions and billions of galaxies, stars, planets, us. But this contradicts that one would assume that the universe would treat matter and antimatter symmetrically, which would then mean that at the moment of the Big Bang, equal parts of matter and antimatter should have been created and then completely cancelled each other out, leaving nothing in its place. Somehow there was an excess amount of matter that went on to survive, and we don't know how or why. Yes, I am saying that we don't know why anything exists. Yes, this may make you have an existential crisis. Welcome to the club, my friends. Despite a ton of research being put into it, we still aren't very close to understanding the mystery of why there is more matter than antimatter. Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have Mali virus. Back in 2015, French researchers discovered a gigantic virus that they found in a sample of Siberian permafrost. This spherical DNA virus wasn't just any old virus. No, this one was about 30,000 years old. For the virus to survive that long, frozen in ice, truly is remarkable and also absolutely terrifying. There is good news, however. It is said that although some refer to this virus as a behemoth, it is said that the new discovery only infects amoebas, which means that it is unlikely to ravage the planet anytime soon. At least we hope. In our number 9 spot today, we have Lake Vostok. Many of us have heard of Atlantis, but have you heard of Lake Vostok? This lake is located in Antarctica, and it is so huge it's one of the largest lakes in the entire world. The lake not only has a large surface area, but it's also quite deep, which only adds to the volume of the lake. It's like the lakiest lake out there, and here's the thing about it. It is covered by ice, and not just any ice, but the East Antarctic ice sheet, which is just the largest ice sheet in the world. This subglacial lake has ice so thick that we don't really know a lot about what lies beneath it, and the ice has been there for millions of years. But when the first samples of the actual lake water were taken, it became apparent that there may be species in the lake that we we know absolutely nothing about. In our number 8 spot today we have the female mummy. Back in 2017 there was a mummy found in Siberia that absolutely rocked the scientific community. This discovery was so remarkable because deep within the permafrost, close to the Arctic Circle, they found the mummified remains of a woman who was roughly 900 years old. Said to have come from the medieval times, this marked the first woman to be discovered in that area, as previously it had been mostly men. It appears as though the mummification part was accidental, but it was quite a surprise to researchers who had thought that they wouldn't find a woman's remains in the area at all. It is said that all of the bodies found in this area belonged to a hunting and fishing civilization, and this discovery gave experts very valuable insight into their lives and the times in which they lived. In our number 7 spot today we have Mount Erebus. Mount Erebus is the highest active volcano in Antarctica, as well as the southernmost active volcano on Earth. Got a lot going on. The volcano has been active for 1.3 million years, and it features a lava lake in the inner summit crater that's been present since the early 1970s. You might be thinking, it's a volcano, which surely is like the opposite of ice, right? But as it turns out, this volcano is like the definition of fire and ice. Here you can be sure to find numerous ice fumaroles, which are ice towers that form around the gases that are released or that escape from the vents on the surface. This creates a perfect home not for many, but for some persevering and adaptable bacteria and fungi. This gives scientists quite the opportunity to study these organisms that can live in this extreme environment that doesn't really provide a lot of resources. In our number 6 spot today we have the Iceman. The mummy of Otzi, who is also referred to as the Iceman, was found in 1991 in the Ötztal Alps in Italy. It is believed that Otzi lived around 3000 BC, and his body became mummified and preserved because of the glacier that surrounded him post-mortem. While this is an incredibly interesting discovery, the finding of Otzi may have come in a package with an old curse just waiting to be released. Here's the thing, the people who helped with the discovery of Otzi are all dying under mysterious circumstances. I mean, it is said that there were 7 deaths in 1 year alone, so if there is a curse, it's clearly a pretty strong one. It's almost as if disturbing a man who's been in the same spot for 53 centuries wasn't the best idea that anyone's ever had. In our number 5 spot today we have Europa. We are going off planet for this one. One of Jupiter's moons, called Europa, has a red tinge to it, and in 2001 NASA scientists revealed that it's possible that alien microbes might be responsible for this red color. The surface of this moon is mostly ice, but it has been shown that it reflects infrared radiation in a really bizarre way. This means that something is binding it together, but researchers haven't been able to come up with the correct combination of elements and compounds to make the data make sense. There are some bacteria on Earth that can thrive in extreme conditions that also have that red and brown color, which could potentially be responsible for the color on this moon. The surface temperature might be too cold for them to survive, but the warmer interior might be where they are located. Some geological activity on the moon could then push them closer to the surface, where they are then flash frozen in place. In our number 4 spot today we have P38. In 2018, a team of researchers were using a drone with ground-penetrating radar technology when they found something that no one could have predicted. 300 feet deep in the Greenland ground, encased in ice, was a World War II plane. This P-38 Lightning fighter plane is actually just 1 out of 8 that were a squadron. This P-38 Lightning fighter plane was actually just 1 out of 8 that were part of a squadron. This group had all been lost and had crash landings after a blizzard on July 15th, 1942. After locating the fighter plane, researchers were able to then excavate it, but there still remains at least 4 in this squadron that have yet to be located. In our number 3 spot today we have Skeleton Lake. Also sometimes referred to as Mystery Lake, this place is exactly what it sounds like. It's a lake and there's a bunch of skeletons there. Located in the Himalayas, this lake freezes over in the winter months, but when the snow melts, there are various skeletons around the site that become visible around the edges of the lake. There have been many speculations as to how these people died, and at one point it was thought that these remains were a result of a pretty legendary event where, all in a single group, they were killed by a large and violent hailstorm, but the leading theory has since changed. Now it is said that the remains actually belong to 3 distinctly different groups who all died in separate events. At this point, the real story of what happened here may just remain a mystery that has left us with a haunting image. In our number 2 spot today we have Luba. This is the name that was given to a baby mammoth. Mummified remains were found found frozen and extremely well preserved in ice. Luba would have roamed the earth about 48,000 years ago, which is truly incredible to think about. These mammoth remains were found in 2007, but it was actually a complete accident. The remains were found by a hunter who was out on a frozen peninsula in Russia. But here's where the story takes a bit of a crazy turn. So the man who discovered these remains didn't want to touch her because of a cultural belief that touching a mammoth would cause a bad omen, so he traveled to a nearby town to consult a friend, and this is when they decided to contact the authorities. The authorities then flew out to the area to collect the remains, but when they arrived, she had disappeared. The person who found her knew that someone had likely taken her to try and turn a profit, so he began doing some investigations. Long story short, they found the remains outside of a local store, and this is when it was revealed to them that the guy who had found the remains initially, his cousin had stolen them and brought them here in exchange for 2 snowmobiles. In the end, there was unfortunately minor damage to the body that included dogs having chewed off her right ear, but still the find and discovery was still incredible, and she was transported to a museum where she continues to give people a look into a time on Earth long ago. In our number 1 spot today, we have the Incan mummy. 20,000 feet above sea level on the edge of a volcano, researchers were startled to find a woman frozen in ice. This Incan mummy is said to have been so well preserved that she even still had lice in her hair. The researchers and doctors who examined her after her discovery were completely baffled at how well preserved she was, so much so that some of her features reminded them of a living, breathing human being, even down to the extremities. It truly was just remarkable. It is believed that this woman likely met her fate where she was found as a result of sacrifice. Because of her well-preserved nature, scientists were able to determine that she was suffering from quite a few ailments, including tuberculosis, which some believe is the reason why she was sacrificed.
Starting off this countdown, we have the head transplant. So scientists have discovered a way to transfer a head from one body to another. I know, it's crazy. Let me explain. So Italian surgeon Sergio Canavero managed to attach a smaller rat to a larger rat and still kept the rat alive. The rat was still fully functioning. He also claimed to have successfully done this with dogs, and in 2016 he did this on a monkey. Apparently he does this by attaching the spinal cords together, and now he's looking for real-life people to be a part of his experiment. He wants to be able to do this on humans. Maybe that's why Walt Disney had his head frozen for so many years. He's waiting to be attached to another, younger body. Just kidding. But seriously, this is terrifying. In our 9th spot, we have the alien DNA. And if you guys are liking this video so far, make sure to give it a big thumbs up and make sure you stick around right to the end of the video because I am shouting out your weird comments. In 2014, it was discovered that DNA can survive re-entry from space. Basically, Swiss and German scientists put DNA on the exterior of a rocket. The rocket then did a trip around space and back to Earth. And they found that the DNA on the rocket survived. Meaning, if there is life out there and they sent a message to Earth, their alien DNA would successfully survive on Earth. This has scared a lot of people because they think an alien invasion is now possible, which is pretty creepy, not gonna lie. Also, that means intergalactic bacteria and disease can also survive its trip to Earth, which can threaten humanity. Isn't that great? Moving on to number 8, we have the deadly snails. So, snails are slow, tiny creatures that no one really fears, but maybe we should. Apparently, snails are one of the most deadly animals in the world. Why? Well, freshwater snails kill up to 20,000 people a year. People die after drinking water contaminated with snail eggs. If you do this, then you develop a condition called schistosomiasis. And guess what? These snails can live 3 to 10 years in a host's body. In some cases, they have lived 40 years inside of a person, which is disgusting, and I never want to swim in a lake ever again. Just kidding, but seriously, add snails to the list of things that I'm afraid of. In our 7th spot, we have the viruses. The advancements we have made in medicine is quite fascinating. Over the years, millions of lives have been saved as a result. But I got some bad news. Some microbes are evolving so fast that scientists can't find a way to fight them. On top of that, viruses are mutating constantly. They keep having to find new antibiotics and vaccines to defeat them. In fact, some strains of bacteria are becoming drug resistant. It's quite a scary time right now. I mean, we are witnessing this all firsthand. In our 6th spot, we have the zombie invasion. Over the years, the fear of a zombie outbreak has been on the rise. We can thank The Walking Dead and other shows for that. But in all seriousness, zombies can become a thing. According to scientists, there could be a cordyceps out there that could cause this to happen. Cordyceps is a type of parasitic fungi that attacks a host and then takes over the host. Usually we see this happen to insects, but scientists say it could happen to humans too. Dun dun dun! If it does happen, then it would turn us into brain-dead zombies. But they did say the chances of this happening are 1 out of a million though. Still, the fact they say it might happen is terrifying, okay? There could be zombies. Scientists said it. We're now at our 5th and halfway mark with the multiple Earths. In 2014, NASA discovered several interesting planets. One of them is named Kepler 452b. Don't know who named that, but they should be fired. It is a planet that closely resembles Earth. In fact, it's the most Earth-like planet outside of our solar system. In fact, NASA estimates that there are 1 billion Earth-like planets in the Milky Way alone, meaning there has to be life on those planets. Scary fact is, the life on those planets might be way more advanced than us. They just know that there has to be other intelligent life forms out there somewhere, which is cool, but also very daunting. Like, they could take over Earth if they really wanted to. Moving on to number 4, we have the caterpillar zombie virus. This is a pretty scary virus that targets caterpillars. I'm glad it can't transfer over to humans, and you'll understand why. Basically, caterpillars that have this virus will eat until they get so fat. They just keep eating until their body can't take it anymore, and they literally explode. When they explode, they spray guts everywhere. And any caterpillars that get sprayed will then contract this virus as well. So they literally eat themselves to death until they burst. Imagine if humans got this. Like, you're walking down the street and next thing you know, someone explodes on you. That's disgusting. Moving on to number 3, we have the junk food. In 1948, researchers discovered just how bad junk food really is for you. In a study with over 5,000 residents, they were looking at the risk factors for heart disease. That's when they found people that ate good tasting food like fries, ice cream, brownies, chips, you get it. They were more prone for heart disease as well as diabetes and stroke. The researchers discovered just how disturbing the effects junk food and fast food have on the body, which is sad because I just want to eat chips and burgers all day and not have to worry. Moving on to number 2, we have the plastics, and I'm not talking about the girls from the Mean Girls. If you know, then you know. Okay, we all know that plastics are bad for the environment and that they're polluting the earth. But in 2014, another shocking discovery was made about plastics. They discovered that BPA found in most plastic products act like synthetic estrogen. This means that constant exposure to it can lead to fertility problems, or even cause tumors in women's uteruses. Long-term exposure can also lead to breast cancer, heart attacks, and diabetes. Basically, by drinking and eating food from these plastic containers, you're ingesting these chemicals into your body. So it could be slowly killing you and you don't even know it. And in our number 1 spot, we have the parasite. If you're eating something right now, I suggest you put your food away because you're about to lose your appetite. Trust me, this next discovery is very disgusting. So basically, there was a Russian woman that discovered a small lump below her left eye. She didn't really think anything of it until the lump moved. It moved above her eye, and then next thing you know, there was a bump on her lip. That's when she reached out and got medical attention. Turns out, she had a thread-like worm living in her body. This is known as Dirofilaria repens. It typically infects dogs, cats, foxes, and other wild animals. But turns out, they can transfer to humans too. How lovely. It can be spread by mosquito bites. Then this worm will live in your tissue under your skin. Ugh, no thank you.
Starting off this list, in our number 10 spot, we have the hero ant. This is a type of ant that was officially classified in 2014. These ants nest in the ground or in rotten wood, and they were found in Madagascar. The name of these ants comes from this wild technique they have when it comes to an intruder who is invading their territory. Of course, these ants feel a duty to protect their home and their colony, so what do they do when someone threatens their safety? Well, they grab a hold of the intruder and throw them and themselves off of the ant equivalent of a cliff. So far it seems like they are the only species that willingly throws themselves off of cliffs, but hey, it earned them the name of a hero, so maybe it was all worth it. Somehow these ants are able to pick themselves up after the fall and get right back to work. In our number 9 spot today we have Salazar's pit viper. This new green pit viper species was discovered in 2019 and finally classified in 2020. It was first found in the Himalayas and was actually one of 5 new reptile species found in the area that year. If you're a Harry Potter lover, this one might be obvious, but the snake was named after the Harry Potter character Salazar Slytherin. The snake features a dark green head and yellowish green dorsal scales throughout the rest of its body. The males and females of this species have different physical characteristics, with the males having yellow, orange, and reddish-orange stripes with a rust-colored tail, which is something that is not seen on the females. The snakes are nocturnal and are often found coiled around shrubs at night. Currently, their habitat is under threat due to developments such as road widening, agriculture, and hydroelectric projects, not to mention the current plans to build a 49-kilometer-long road that cuts directly through their habitat. In our number 8 spot today we have the Emperor Dumbo octopus. These guys are a new species of Dumbo octopus that was discovered just last year. It was discovered in the Emperor Seamounts in the North Pacific Ocean just off of the coast of Japan. The location of the discovery is where they got their name from, which I thought was important to include because when I first heard their name, I thought it meant that they were huge, which was initially a little concerning. There is actually only one of these species that has ever been found, which was the single specimen that was used to confirm this discovery. Because the specimen was found alive and was the only one we've located, scientists were thankfully careful to use only non-invasive techniques to identify it, which included micro CT scans and 3D imaging. These techniques ensure that the little guy could continue living his life while we can also learn more about it, which truly is the best of both worlds. The one we found was located at a depth of around 3,900 to 4,400 meters in the ocean. In our number 7 spot today we have the deadly sponge. To be perfectly honest, sea sponges have always kind of creeped me out. Like, they're just so different, and it's crazy that they really are alive. But this newly discovered species of sea sponges takes things to a whole new level. These sponges, to something like a shrimp, would probably look like a lovely place to take a little rest stop, but upon closer examination, they're hiding a deadly little secret. While most sea sponges filter water that they flush through their bodies and get nutrients from all of the single-celled organisms that pass through, these species of sea sponges, announced in 2014, have decided that they need a little something more. That's right, these sea sponges are carnivores. These sponges feature these tiny little microscopic hooks on them that act like Velcro for that unsuspecting shrimp. Once snagged by the sponge, after a few hours, the sponge's cells will start to engulf and digest it, and within a few days all that will be left is an empty shell. Definitely one of those circle of life things, but still, it's a little macabre to be perfectly honest. In our number 6 spot today we have the pine rockland trapdoor spider. Maybe not terrifying to scientists, but definitely terrifying to me. This spider has a bit of an interesting discovery story. This spider species was actually discovered in 2012, but it wasn't really researched and found out to be a new spider species until last year in 2021. When this spider was originally found, it was located by a staff member at the Miami Zoo who was inspecting reptile research traps. When the staff member was unable to identify this spider based on the existing records of spiders in the area, they knew that they had found something unusual. 2 years later, another one of these spiders was found and looked at by experts in the field. Rebecca Godwin, who is a PhD, who is the assistant professor of biology at Piedmont College in Demorest, Georgia, was able to confirm that this spider was in fact a previously undescribed species. After years of research, she was able to officially identify it as a new species similar to a tarantula. This discovery was extremely exciting as it came from an endangered piece of forest that is located in the middle of a city. Researchers have explained that this is just one of the many reasons why it is so important that we work to preserve these kinds of areas so that we don't lose the things we do know, but also those that we don't yet. In our number 5 spot today we have the deepwater snapper. This new fish belongs to a small genus of bottom-dwelling fish that are absolutely massive. There were previously 3 different species belonging to the genus, but this one marks the 4th. The newer discovered one is seemingly identical to one of the other already discovered species, with the same bright pink color, the same usual ocean depth of around 200 to 400 meters, and they're also both usually found in the Indian and Pacific Oceans. But despite all of this, the genetics of these fish are actually different. The new species also has a few small physical details that set it apart from the others, such as smaller eyes and a black spot on the tip of its upper tail fin. It is believed that this fish had previously been misidentified as the other similar species, and since these fish are usually caught on the same fishing line, this new distinction is incredibly important for fisheries because each fish species needs to be managed differently. The fish was named in honor of Dr. Brian Bowen, who is a researcher at the University of Hawaii, who has spent over 3 decades of his life dedicated to studying marine fish. In our number 4 spot today, we have the false gecko. This is definitely among the smallest of the creatures on this list, measuring at just 42 to 52 millimeters long. These little guys were found on the southeastern tip of the main island of the Philippines, Luzon. Their scientific name comes from their tendency to hide in hollow areas such as logs. They have inverted Y-shaped markings along their entire tail, as well as golden yellow colored eyes, which apparently are reflective. Previous to the discovery of this new false gecko, there were 9 other known species of false geckos, all of which are endemic to the Philippines. Because of their small size, their tendencies to hide, and their camouflage abilities, these little guys are extremely difficult to find, which is definitely part of the reason they are such a new discovery. One of the researchers on the team of scientists who discovered this new species explained that this new discovery just might create a greater appreciation for the biodiversity in the Philippines and will hopefully prompt a better management of the wilderness areas located there. Researchers are currently worried that this brand new species might be close to extinction due to habitat loss. In our number 3 spot today, we have marsupial frogs. These guys were discovered in 2021 and they were found in a protected part of the Amazon rainforest. It is estimated that there is the highest concentration of undiscovered animals in the Amazon, so it really makes sense that we would find a new species here. These frogs feature a green color and they have a coarse, granular, and patternless dorsal skin. They have turquoise colored eyes and their venter doesn't have any sort of splotches, specks, or dots. I'm not gonna lie, I had to look up what a venter is, but I guess it's just like the belly area of the frog. You know, the more you know. These guys are called marsupial frogs because the females hold eggs in a closed dorsal pouch, which is similar to that of like a kangaroo or other kinds of marsupial animals. In our number 2 spot today, we have the enigma moth. This is a type of moth that was discovered back in 2015 and it is regarded as quite an exciting discovery, to be quite honest. While I personally hate moths, this one even has me feeling alright about it. On Kangaroo Island, which is in South Australia, it was discovered that the island, which has been settled since 1836, was holding an insect species that was entirely unknown to science. When these moths were found, they were realized to have more primitive features, so scientists had a job to figure out just how primitive. Turns out these guys are kinda like a living fossil. Even the most primitive moths we know of have jaws. A sign of a more recent moth is that of a tongue, but this newly discovered moth species has neither a tongue nor a jaw. All in all, this discovery is said to have been one of the most exciting in entomology in the last 40 years. One of the reasons these moths might have been hard to pin down is because their adult lives are lived in one single day. In one day they emerge from their cocoon, mate, reproduce, and then die. Definitely a jam-packed day, that's for sure. In our number 1 spot today, we have the bone house wasp. Well, really all you need to know about this one is in its name. These wasps were discovered in southeast China in 2014 and their scientific name was inspired by graveyard bone houses or ossuaries. This is because the females of this species, after they lay eggs, will riddle their home with dead ant corpses. Yeah, not exactly the same sort of nesting I was expecting, but hey, to each their own. Of course, this is thought to potentially make their nest less vulnerable to predators, and the smell smell of the dead ants might even fully deter them and completely camouflage the nest. All in all, while it is of course a survival tactic, it's also quite a gruesome thought. In our number 10 spot, we have Brendan Fraser and Josh Hutcherson on their journey to the center of the Earth. Just kidding! In our number 10 spot, we have the Atlantis Massif Drill. On a journey to the center of the Earth through the seafloor, you would first go through the sediment and then a layer of basalt, and then you would hit the gabbroic layer, which is the layer directly above the mantle. We have gone through to this layer before, but because of the fact that the basalt is hard to get through, it's not done often. In 2010, a team of scientists led by Stephen Giovanni of Oregon State University drilled down into the Atlantis Massif. This spot was chosen specifically because of the fact that the tectonic activity below this submerged mountain caused the gabbroic layer to be pushed up within 70 meters of the sea floor, which made this spot the easiest to reach. So, on this mission, the team was able to drill 1,391 meters down where the temperatures reach 102 degrees Celsius, and here they found life. They found communities of bacteria that were quite a surprise. Stephen had previously found life in the form of microorganisms at the basalt layer during previous research missions, and it was expected that a similar type of life would be found here, but it was actually very different. At the moment, it is believed that this bacteria may have found its way down there from more shallow regions rather than having evolved inside of the crust. In our number 9 spot today, we have a mountain range. What if I told you that you currently might be unknowingly standing on top of a mountain? An inside Earth mountain, of course, which I'm sure is the sciencey term for it. Subterranean mountains exist beneath our feet as a part of the layered structure that exists inside of our beautiful Earth. Scientists were able to get a better look at these mountains using the seismic waves from multiple big earthquakes, and based on the most recent evidence, they know that not only are some of these mountains taller than Mount Everest, but they are also extremely rugged mountains. I know these mountains don't sit in the crust and instead exist in a transition zone between the upper and lower mantle, but we had to talk about them today still. Discoveries like this are super important because they can give scientists insight onto how the planet formed and how it functions. It might also give us some clues as to why the Earth is a bit of a chemical oddball in terms of planets. In our number 8 spot today, we have blobs. About 1,000 kilometers into the Earth, the layers there are being torn apart by the rising plumes of hot rock. You know, regular inside the Earth stuff. But under these plumes, there are two strange blobs, about the size of Australia. Again, I know this one's a little too deep to be in the crust of the Earth, but mysterious blobs inside the Earth need to be talked about. We can't just ignore something like that. These blobs sit at the bottom of the rocky mantle just outside of the molten outer core. They're made of rock like the rest of the mantle is, but they are much more hot and much more dense, and if we can figure out more about them, they could hold some pretty important answers about the history of our planet. The blobs were first spotted in the 1970s, and since then they truly have been baffling to scientists. One of the blobs is underneath Africa and the other is under the Pacific Ocean. Right now, the main debate over these blobs is what exactly they are made of, but that is difficult to answer since we can't ever go there to find out. Maybe one day we'll be able to. In our number 7 spot today, we have the fifth layer. We're traditionally taught that the Earth has 4 main layers: the crust, the mantle, the outer core, and the inner core. I mean, at least this is what I was taught, but there is a team from the Australian National University who, last year, confirmed the existence of what is being called Earth's innermost inner core. The idea of this layer had been around for a while, but the data to prove it was previously lacking. Through observing the data of how seismic waves travel through the Earth, they were able to detect this new innermost core, and although it is quite difficult to observe, this discovery may give insight into a previously unknown dramatic event that took place in the history of Earth's existence. Geophysicist and study lead Joanne Stevenson said, "We found evidence that may indicate a change in the structure of iron, which suggests perhaps 2 separate cooling events in Earth's history. The details of this big event are still a bit of a mystery, but we've added another piece of the puzzle when it comes to our knowledge of the Earth's inner core." In our number 6 spot today, we have an ancient seabed. A seabed that once was located at the bottom of the Pacific Ocean was found buried hundreds of miles beneath China. This slab of rock once found its home at the top of the lithosphere, which is the outermost layer of the surface of the Earth. How did it get hundreds of miles below China? Well, it got pushed down by a neighboring tectonic plate in what is called a subduction event. This discovery was so notable because scientists had never detected a subduction event so deep within the surface of the planet. When they found this rock slab, it was still continuing its descent towards the mantle of the Earth. I wonder if one day it will ever come back to the surface again. In our number 5 spot today, we have old crust. Speaking of what I just said, we've got to talk about the vanishing crust of the Earth. I mean, we just talked about finding old outer layers of the Earth descending down into the planet, but what happens to this crust? Researchers have now provided evidence that shows that while Earth's crust is mostly made up of new materials, there is a percentage of it that is ancient chunks that once sunk down to the mantle, only to later resurface. This led them to also discover that based on the amount of the crust that was recycled, the planet would have had to have been creating crust since its formation 4.5 billion years ago, which contradicted the previous theories. Like, I wonder if the crust we're standing on right now is the same crust that the dinosaurs stood on. Maybe that's scientifically inaccurate, but it's kind of a cool thought. In our number 4 spot today, we have ultra low velocity zones. These guys are called ULVZs for short. Yes, I'm Canadian. And these are patches on the core mantle boundary that have extremely low seismic velocities. So remember when we were talking about the blobs and how they use seismic activity to find them? Well, the zones where the blobs are slow velocity zones. So what could be in the areas where there's ultra low velocity? These zones are mapped as being hundreds of kilometers in diameter and tens of kilometers thick, and their shear wave velocities can be up to 30% lower than the areas surrounding them. It is currently hypothesized that these zones are either enriched in iron, partially molten, or a combination of the two. Or perhaps they are a result of the presence of carbon. Again, it's one of those things that is super hard to observe when you can't actually go down and check it out. In our number 3 spot today, we have the Earth's core. Okay, we're talking about the core again. I know, not the crust, but the discovery of the age of the core of the Earth is something we have to talk about. The solid inner core of the Earth is a 2,442 kilometer ball of iron that has now been estimated to have formed 1 billion to 1.3 billion years ago. Scientists were able to recreate the conditions found in the core on a teeny tiny scale, and this allowed them to be able to calculate how long it would take for a blob of molten iron to build up to the core's current size. The window of time that they found lined up nicely with the known changes and fluctuations in the magnetic field of the Earth, which increased greatly in strength about 1 billion to 1.5 billion years ago. It is possible that the crystallization of the inner core may have been responsible for the strengthening of the magnetism because the process would have released heat into the outer core, and this heat would drive the churning motion of the liquid, which would then power the magnetic field. This discovery came just last year in 2020, and it absolutely rocked the scientific community. I just love science. In our number 2 spot today, we have an ocean. Researchers from Northwestern University and the University of Mexico report that there is evidence that there may be oceans worth of water deep below the United States. Well, not exactly liquid water as we know it up here, but the water is located within the rock deep inside the mantle of the Earth, and this just may be the Earth's largest water reservoir. Part of what makes our planet so livable is the liquid water on our surface, and for a long time researchers have been trying to figure out just how much water exists on our Earth, and that includes both the oceans we see and the reservoirs we can't. These researchers found deep pockets of magma about 400 miles beneath North America, and this is thought to likely be a signature of the presence of water. This discovery would suggest that water from the surface can be brought down deep into the Earth by tectonic plates, where it will then eventually cause the partial melting of rocks within the mantle. This discovery is extremely helpful in finding answers to the question of the vast amounts of water on our planet and where the missing deep water has been. For a long time, scientists have speculated that there is water trapped in the rocky mantle, but this is the first time someone has been able to show some direct evidence of that. In our number 1 spot today, we have structures. It has become abundantly clear to me that seismic waves are an extremely important part of the discoveries from within the Earth. Using a machine algorithm that was actually intended to analyze distant galaxies, researchers were able to instead learn something about what was going on inside of our own planet. Using this technique, they found 2 separate unidentified structures deep within our Earth. One is located under the Marquesas Islands and had never been previously detected, while the other is located beneath Hawaii, and it was found to have been much larger than than what was previously thought. The first one I mentioned was found because it was in a mega ULVZ zone, and it is believed that both of these structures are made up of some sort of exotic materials that date all the way back to a time before the Earth even had a moon. That's crazy. An Earth with no moon on it is not an Earth I want to live on. It is thought that these structures might be partially melted material that comes from at least 4 billion years ago. This showed that it is possible mega ULVZs might host primitive geochemical signatures that have been relatively untouched since formation.
Starting off this countdown, we have the faceless toad. So in 2016, herpetologist Jill Fleming was in a forest in Connecticut exploring the wildlife when she came across a toad that was lacking its entire face. But it was still alive, and it was hopping around into things. There's a couple of theories as to what happened to this toad. Theory 1 is that its face was eaten off by flesh-eating toadfly larvae. Theory 2 is that a predator ate its face off during hibernation, and since it did happen when it was hibernating, its face managed to heal itself over. Either way, this toad is quite a weird find. In our 9th spot, we have the Lincoln log. Posted on Reddit by the user Texas Joey, they were out for a hike somewhere in Texas when they came across something very odd. Embedded in the trunk of a fallen tree were rows upon rows of pennies. It didn't make any sense, pun intended. There were so many pennies that he couldn't coint how many there were. I mean, it looks pretty cool, but who decided to do this? How much money did they spend on it, and how did they get the pennies in the tree in the first place? Coming in at number 8, we have the artificial womb. A team of researchers at a Philadelphia lab have created an artificial womb that in the future may be able to help premature babies. So basically, they created a bag of fluids to resemble the womb with a mechanical placenta that keeps blood oxygenated. As part of the experiment, they removed lambs who were just 15 to 17 weeks old from their mothers and placed them in this bag. They discovered that the lambs could grow normally with few complications. That's a pretty huge discovery, especially since premature babies are prone to infection in incubators. As weird as it may be, an artificial womb might be the way to go. Coming in at number 7, we have the mysterious stone. In 1872, a weird stone was found buried close to Lake Winnipesaukee, I know I pronounced that wrong, in New Hampshire. The stone looks like an egg in shape, is dark, smooth, and has a number of carved images on it. Some of the carved things are a face, corn, and a teepee. But since the discovery, it has baffled scientists. What is it? Who made it, and why? One theory is that it was made by Native Americans as sort of like an olive branch to give to other tribes. Another theory is that it has Celtic or Inuit origins. Another thing that's weird about the stone is that there are 2 holes drilled into it, one at the top and one at the bottom. But they are so precise. The question is, how did they manage that without modern day tools? Because of this, some people believe that it was a thunderstorm made by supernatural forces. In our 6th spot, we have Dighton Rock. In 1690, a 40-ton boulder with weird markings was found in the Taunton River in Massachusetts. No one knows what the markings are or what it's about. One theory is that the markings are Norse in origin. It possibly depicts a Viking voyage. Another theory is that it was the work of Native Americans. The rock is telling us something, but we haven't figured it out just yet. Over the years, people have tried to decode it, but still haven't been successful. The only people that know what the rock means are the ones that made it themselves. We are now at our 5th and halfway mark with America's Stonehenge. Located outside of Salem, New Hampshire, is a bunch of weird rock structures known as America's Stonehenge. So there's a bunch of man-made chambers, walls, and structures all made out of stone. In fact, this structure is considered the oldest man-made construction in the US. It's thought to be over 4,000 years old, but no one knows what it was used for or why it was built. One theory is that it was used as an area for ceremonial gatherings. Another theory is that it somehow is an astrological calendar. But we truly don't know. So for now, it remains a weird mystery. Coming in at number 4, we have Donald Trump Eye. Back in 2017, a strange moth was discovered in Southern California. It's a tiny moth with yellowish white scales on its head, and it was named Neopalpa Donald Trump Eye. Yeah, Donald Trump has its own moth named after him. Why? Well, the scales on the moth's head look a lot like Donald Trump's signature hairdo, so the scientist that discovered it named it after him. Which, I mean, it's cool, I want something named after me, but certainly not a moth. Moving on to number 3, we have the Great Serpent Mound. Located in Ohio, the Great Serpent Mound is an effigy mound, aka a fancy way of saying a mound in the shape of an animal. In this case, it looks like a snake with a curled tail. Some say that it looks like the snake has its mouth open and is about to engulf an egg, while others believe it depicts a snake with one big eye. So this mound is the world's largest surviving effigy mound from the prehistoric era. Built around 1080, this mound is around 1,348 meters long and 3 feet high. What makes it weird is the fact that we don't know why this was created, or by what culture, or what its use was. Maybe it was used in religious ceremonies, or is some sort of calendar. Who knows? In our second spot, we have the pig-human hybrid. Yeah, you heard me correctly. Scientists at the Salk Institute for Biological Sciences in California have created a human-pig hybrid. Now, you're probably wondering, why on earth would they do this? Because that certainly was my question. Well, they did this with hopes that one day they could grow human organs inside of pigs and other animals instead of just waiting for a donor. Yeah, I know how problematic that is going to be for a number of reasons. So in 2017, an embryo was placed in an adult pig for 4 weeks. Then it was taken out to analyze, and the embryo survived and contained some human cells. Now they're gonna figure out if pig embryos can handle enough human cells to create human organs. Now if someone calls you a cow, you can be like, nah honey, only my heart is. And in our number 1 spot, we have the ginormous tadpole. Okay, there's something weird about the amphibians in the States. We got the faceless toad in Connecticut, and now we got a giant tadpole found in Arizona. Tadpoles vary in size, but typically they're anywhere from 1.3 inches to 4.2 inches. But not this tadpole. So while removing invasive bullfrogs from a shallow pond in Arizona, they stumbled upon a disgustingly big bullfrog tadpole. This thing was 10 inches long, larger than a soda can, pretty much as long as a banana, and its head was about the size of a big adult bullfrog's head. And while studying it, it continued to grow bigger and bigger. They believe that its massive size was due to a hormone imbalance. Because of its size, they named it the Goliath tadpole.